We have a great presentation for you today. It's called Fundraising in a Pandemic, Funniest in the Fort. And Matt Wire from the Literacy Alliance in Fort Wayne, Indiana is going to talk to us about a great virtual fundraising event that they did. It sounded like it was a lot of fun. I won't steal his thunder, but it sounded like it was a lot of fun, and it raised a lot of money for the Literacy Alliance. So a little bit about things here. We are recording. We will follow up with an email on Monday with links to the webinar recording. Matt has agreed to share his slideshow, so we'll include that. We'll have a presentation summary, which will actually be a summary of Matt's, the details of Matt's Funniest in the Fort fundraising event. So we'll give a good description of that so that you can have that if you want to try to replicate it. We'll also include transcripts of the chat, the Q&A, and a certificate for those of you who attended. A little bit about the Zoom controls for those of you who haven't attended a webinar with us before. We're going to ask that you use the chat to introduce yourself, share links and resources with the group. I might post some links and resources in the chat. If you want to ask questions of the group, you can do that in the chat. If you have content questions for Matt, we're going to ask that you use the Q&A function, that little Q&A button, to ask those questions. That allows us to track those questions and make sure we get everybody's questions answered. Matt's agreed to stick around after the webinar is over at the top of the hour to make sure everybody's question gets answered. So that'll help us track everything. A little bit about our upcoming webinars. So this is, I think, our third webinar in a series called Fundraising in a Pandemic. This is a initiative that was funded by a grant from Lynn Reed, kind of recognizing that programs, once people figured out how to do virtual instruction, trying to do the other operations of their program, one of the main ones is fundraising, and either matter of staying in touch with donors, fundraising events that you relied on now can't be done in person. So we put together this series of webinars to kind of give programs some ideas on how to deal with that. And so you see our upcoming, we've got 3 more webinars coming up in this series. We also have a lot of other webinars coming up around distance education, just basic instruction, and we're launching a new series in our Learn and Share Leadership webinars. These are for Pro Literacy members, but they're around our literacy management and leadership training. And you see the topics there. And what we're going to do is we're going to have executive directors come in and they're going to talk about specific projects that they've worked on in areas of financial management, administrative management, human resource management, talk about what they did, why they did it. They're going to talk about our courses around those topics and kind of how they helped and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So if you're a Pro Literacy member, be on the lookout for announcements around those. And you can find a calendar of all of our webinars along with recordings of the webinars we've previously done at proliteracy.org/webinars. So that's enough of my kind of logistics. So I am going to turn things over to Matt Wire. Matt is the Director of Communications for the Literacy Alliance in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You see their website there. This is an organization that really kicked off our ideas from the field webinars back in the spring. They were kind enough to present about how they were dealing with transferring their in-person courses to virtual learning. And now they've come back, and Matt's going to talk to us about how they've converted some of their in-person fundraising, either converted it or created new fundraising ideas that work virtually. So Matt, I'm going to turn things over to you. I'll stop sharing and you can start.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a rainy day here in Northeast Indiana as well, so the people that are around that have sunny weather, I am jealous. I'm not going to lie. My name is Matt Wire. I'm the Director of Communications at the Literacy Alliance in Fort Wayne, and I appreciate your time today. First, I need to say I would be remiss if I didn't briefly introduce our organization. The Literacy Alliance provides free basic education programs for adults in Allen, Adams, and Wells counties in Northeast Indiana. These include pre-HSE classes. Those are students that come to us testing below a 6th grade level, as well as HSE classes to help students prepare to take their high school equivalency exam. Here, I'm very proud to say are some of our amazing recent graduates. They all have their own story and they're all really unique and they're all amazing people. And I'm very, very happy to be able to present them to you today. In addition, we provide ESOL classes for those learning English as a second language, professional certifications, and we also do on-site training for local companies at a very minimal cost. One of the keys to our program's success is removing as many barriers to education as we can. So once a student is ready to take their HSE exam, we pay the exam fee, which is currently around $115 in Indiana. This is often a pretty big barrier to adult students wanting to get their diploma, so we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Because our programs are free to our students, we depend on the generosity of our community. This support comes from local foundations, individuals, and companies. For the past few years, our main fundraiser was an in-person event called Last for Literacy. This was a laugh out loud event where members of our community gathered to play games, win prizes, gain bragging rights, but most importantly, we would raise funds for our programs and community awareness of our organization. Our live event was always very interactive. There would be dinner and drinks, just like you'd expect in the show, but there was also games where teams from the audience would vie for bragging rights. And of course, then came 2020. As I'm sure we're all aware, 2020 threw us a curveball. We couldn't gather together to laugh and raise those much needed funds. So in mid-June, our event committee met to brainstorm some new ideas. Through a lot of gnashing of teeth and comparison of dozens of different ideas, we came up with the concept of funniest in the fort. By mid-July, our plan was all but in place. The concept, we would gather video clips of local business leaders and celebrities telling their best or worst jokes. Once we gathered them, we would have them compete for the title of funniest in the fort. To do that, we were going to post them online and have the community vote for who they thought was the funniest. It was also a great trophy, but we didn't tell any of our participants because everyone likes a little surprise. Hopefully, if everything worked out, we'd raise some money and awareness for our organization. As we were in uncharted territory, we honestly had no idea how this would play out. One thing of note is the logo for the event. While the Groucho brand mark was in place and had been used for several years, we wanted to convey that this event was going to be online. Because of that, I designed a rough representation of a computer screen to hold the brand mark and gave the name of the event the look of having just been typed into a search engine. Of course, we couldn't do this without our amazing sponsors. So first, we reached out to the previous year sponsors to see if they would be interested in an online event. We were thrilled to find that most of our sponsors already had us in their budget and were happy to help. In fact, all but one sponsor got on board. Lesson learned, if you don't ask, you won't receive. Next, we had to find our joke tellers. To my surprise, we had an almost immediate buy-in from everyone we contacted, including the mayor of Fort Wayne. Mayor Henry is a big fan of our program and attends the in-person event almost every year. Most of our joke tellers recorded their own videos, but a couple asked for our help. I went and personally recorded a couple with my phone, socially distanced, of course. The next hurdle was putting it all together and coming up with a marketing plan. Of course, with the videos, They had to be edited because they're going to be submitted, and I wanted to make sure that they had a brand mark, that they had the name of the person telling the joke, and briefly introduce them. So I'm not going to lie, editing videos was somewhat outside of my comfort zone. Thankfully, there was a fairly quick learning curve because I'm used to Adobe products, and Premiere Pro in this case was very handy. Once they were edited and the nameplates were in place, I uploaded the videos to a hidden folder on YouTube and then embedded the videos on the event page on our website. Took roughly 2 weeks to gather and edit the videos together. I used Adobe products, but there are a lot of free software packages out there. So it's not like you had to use this. If you look at the bottom of the screen, the blue line is the actual movie. The pink things there are the graphics that I embedded. So if you look at the layers, it does make sense if you look at it long enough, and to the right there on the bottom is the elements that are shown in that timeline. Next, we had to figure out how to collect the votes. So in this case, we were using Donor Perfect, and their forms were a great solution for us. Each of our joke tellers got their own form. They were, I could customize them and put their video in place, and then all of the information that was there to collect the votes. So each of these forms was separate, and we could easily run a report and see who was winning that day. Once the forms were there, I went back to our event site and added a vote for me button and a total votes that I updated manually once a day. The good news about updating the votes, or the thing that I think helped, was that the joke tellers themselves could go out and see who was winning. And I really think this spurred a little competition between our joke tellers and maybe raised a few extra dollars. Next, we moved on to Constant Contact, which again is just the software I use. There are other alternatives out there, but this was my saving grace because I could literally create the entire social media campaign and schedule it ahead of time. About a week before voting went live, we announced the event through our usual channels, which in this case are Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. There was a teaser image for the event, seen here. Each day of the event, we posted a link to a specific joke teller with a simple graphic and an action-oriented verbiage. In this case, this is what we posted for Mayor Henry. We wanted to drive people to the website to see the videos and then be sure to vote. So in this case, every vote was $1. So if you donated $10, you voted 10 times for the mayor. We also sent each joke teller a social media kit. It was very basic, but it included a custom graphic as seen on the left and suggested verbiage for the joke tellers or their marketing team. Additionally, I included an exact time and date that we would be promoting the joke tellers. So through our usual channels, we would post vote for Demetrius in this case, and that happened on September 16th. So that they knew they could go out and share those with their channels, which increased our reach tremendously. The kit also included a direct link to their donation form if they wanted to share it via email, and a direct link to the event site. We also had some traditional media. We have a great media, local media in Fort Wayne. We sent media releases to all the local news outlets. We actually got a front page story on one of their websites, which was great for about a week. They ran a news story on the event on the morning news and 5 o'clock news one day. And due to a tight budget, we did refrain from print advertising, but we did manage to get a lot of free advertising for the event, which was great. Again, if you don't ask, you don't know. I am not joking when I say we did this on a shoestring. Because we wanted the majority of the money raised to go to program cost, we kept the budget very low. I had around $150 on Facebook to promote and boost posts. We bought a trophy, and that was roughly $90. So our total overhead for this, not counting my time or anybody else's time, was around $240. I don't know I've ever run a fundraiser that cheaply. By the time the laughter had subsided and we ended up raising roughly $5,000 less than the in-person event the year before. To break it down, we had about 25,000 in sponsorships and we had 5,000 votes for our joke tellers. So we raised around $30,000, which we were amazed by. From the starting point in mid-June to the event being live on September 11th, we had a total of about 3 months of planning and implementation. Between September 1st and the go live date of the 11th, there were a few sleepless nights in the communication office, but we got it done. Few lessons that we learned from this event. We ran the event over the weekend assuming there would be more engagement on social media, but interestingly enough, there were no donations that weekend. All of our donations came in during the work week, which if you think about who our joke tellers were, it isn't really that big of a surprise. Getting our joke tellers engaged was great. They were all very engaged, so much so that most made donations and voted for themselves. I think this is where the spirit of competition worked in our favor. And again, I'll go back to saying, if you don't ask, we learned many of our previous sponsored already had us in their budget and they were more than happy to participate. As a bonus, we added several contacts as new donors came in, and they grew our brand awareness through allowing us to send them our information. They get our e-newsletters once a month. So we're expanding out from where we were from this event. By the time the smoke cleared and the floors were swept, our winner was a local CEO who very graciously posed with the trophy, as you can see here. I'm told it sits in his office in a place of pride. Because of the success of the event in 2020, this year we have plans to host both an online event like this, Funniest in the Fort, and an in-person event at a local theater. We're going to run Funniest in the Fort 2 weeks leading up to the in-person Laughs and Literacy event, where we plan to announce the winner and this year's title holder of Funniest in the Fort. Since things are still up in the air as to where we may be in mid-September, the in-person event will be different than previous years. This year, the plan includes bringing in a nationally known comic act and holding the event in a socially distanced location, in this case, the beautiful Embassy Theater in downtown Fort Wayne. There'll be plenty of room to spread out and enjoy the show from a safe distance. I'm not one for long presentations, so I thank everyone for their time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or help out in whatever way I can.
Let me unmute here. Thanks, Matt. This was great. And while folks are taking some time to put questions in, I have a few questions on my own. Did you have any difficulty, like convincing people to participate in joke telling, or were people enthusiastic? Do you think you might be able to expand when you do this in the future on the number of people that are doing the actual joke telling?
Everybody was very excited to get on board. I don't think we had anybody turn us down from our initial ask. Most people thought it was such a neat idea that they were very, very happy to participate, which was always great. I don't know that we'll expand. We did limit the number. We wanted to keep it under 10. But just for time's sake, we may expand slightly, but I don't know that it would be too much. I'm almost afraid that would cause too many videos to be out there and just not enough, not enough bandwidth for people to take all of them in and then vote for their favorite. We also found that a lot of the people that were voting already had a favorite before they even heard the joke.
And when you talk about like wanting to limit the time, that's because you guys did kind of focus promotion of each joke teller's, like they had a special day where you were promoting their particular joke and things like that. So the more people you participate, it kind of extends out the event.
It does to a point. We had a couple of days. We had more joke tellers than we had days of the event. So we did have a couple of days where we were promoting one in the morning and then one in the afternoon.
Okay. We have a couple of questions. So one is from Terry in the chat. Did you conduct any type of online auction or anything like that as part of the event, or was it strictly fundraising around the voting for the jokes?
There was no online auction. It was strictly around, it was one vote was $1. So depending on how good of you like that joke, if you like that joke well enough and wanted to put 25 votes in, it was a $25 donation.
Okay. Okay. And then we had another question about did you have any volunteers helping you with the technology? And I think you and I talked about this when we met earlier about people videotaping their own uh, 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 jokes, or were you doing the videotaping over Zoom? Can you talk a little bit about how people recorded their videos, got those videos to you, that sort of thing?
Sure, it's a great question. A couple of our joke tellers obviously had they had camera equipment. So our mayor has his own video team. That was very handy. In a couple of cases, I did go out to the location, being socially distanced, and did videotape the joke on my camera. It wasn't anything crazy. I just used my iPhone to do it, and it turned out just as almost as good as the mayor's. The mayor's looked really, really good. I'm not gonna lie.
And then in terms of editing, you said you already had experience using the Adobe products and Adobe Pro. Like, how would you characterize that for somebody new? Is it do you think it's difficult to learn how to use that video editing software?
There are, like I said in the presentation, there are a lot of free video editing software packages out there. I happen to use Creative Cloud for a lot of what I do in my day-to-day. So Premiere Pro was one of those included applications. Thankfully, a lot of the interface within the Adobe system looks the same. So it all made a bit of sense to me. With a little bit of playing around, I figured it out. I think I deleted a video once and freaked out slightly and then figured it out from there. But it was a fairly easy learning curve. There are simpler packages. Premiere Pro is a very, very heavy video package to use. There are a lot of things you can do with it, and I've literally only skimmed the surface there. But I know on there is Movie Maker. There's several other platforms that generally are loaded on your system, either a Mac or Windows based, that you can use that are far more simple than Premiere Pro, that are already there and that are free to use.
And in terms of the media kits that you sent out to people with the ability to post on Facebook and stuff like that, did your joke tellers take advantage of those resources?
Most of them did. There were a couple that didn't, but most of them did. The ones that didn't did not get as many votes as the ones who did.
Right, right. And then I've got one more question, and I'll give people some time to ask some more questions. And just remind people, please put your questions in the Q&A section as opposed to the chat. The chat scrolls, and I don't want to miss your question. You talked about raising money from the actual votes and raising money from sponsorships. Can you talk a little bit more about what the sponsorship uh, structure was, how you promoted the sponsors, that sort of thing, how you incorporated them into the event?
Sure. We made sure that the sponsors, the slide that I showed with the sponsor names, that was actually the bottom of the event page. And all of those were generally linked out to their own websites. As far as reaching out to them, our CEO did all of that, thankfully. She reached out to all of our past sponsors and just to see if they would be interested. And as I said, the majority of them already had us in their budget and were excited about it. We had one drop out, and that was all from the previous year. And I think we gained one that year too. So it was just such a unique and interesting event that people were excited about it, and we were already in their budget. So it was a win-win for us.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I think if people go back and look at that slide or look at the link I posted to your funniest web page, I think you'll see kind of a mix between well-known national companies, probably local companies. It was a good mix. We have a question from Terry about, did you have any issues with the content of the jokes? Did you do any screening? Did you give them any kind of guidance or criteria about the jokes, or did you just kind of rely on people's good judgment?
There was a couple of questions when they were recording. I just shared my screen again. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if that's up just to show the community partners we had.
Perfect.
There were a couple of questions that came about of, can I tell this joke or that joke? I kept it as PG. I asked them to keep it as PG as possible, knowing that this is going out to a wide audience, and that, I basically told them if they wouldn't tell it to their grandmother or their mother, don't tell it here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people, I think it's a good indication that people kind of checked in with you first to say, is it okay if I tell this joke or that joke? That's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that seems to rely on people's kind of common behavior. I
Well,
would,
and I told them, this is going live to the public and it's going to be available to anybody that comes across it. And I did ask them to use their best judgment, but I said, personally, if it were me, I would keep it as PG as possible.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Oh, here we go. Good question from Wendy. How many jokes did people do? Did everybody just do one joke? They got to choose their own?
Yeah, for the most part, everybody submitted one joke. There was an exception. Demetrius was actually from a regional bank here in Indiana called Star. They actually had a competition at their through all of their branches all over Indiana, and people submitted jokes into a central location, and they chose their favorite. If you go to that page, if you go to the funniest page that is linked, you'll see at the bottom there is a honorable mention from Star, and those are some of the jokes that didn't make it.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a great idea. Now, did you suggest that to them, or they came up with that idea on their own?
Star has been a great partner for us through the years, and they actually were so excited about it. They're the ones who came up with that idea, is to find somebody to tell the joke they wanted to run a competition within, which also helped us because it spread brand awareness again.
Right, right. And I think that's a good way of, I think, promoting the awareness of the event throughout a company or an organization. So when it comes time to vote and support your company, you have a lot of people with a vested interest. That's really smart. So that might be a strategy that folks that want to replicate this can share with the individuals or companies that are participating, of kind of having that strategy of submitting jokes and within a company competition. I like that. Um, let's see. We have a statement from Melinda. We also had a team TLA joke team.
We did.
Yeah.
Melinda's the CEO of the Literacy Alliance, by the way. We gathered a few videos of all of us telling jokes, all book literacy based, all fairly bad. I'm not gonna lie, including me telling a really, really bad joke. But yes, that was very popular as well. We gained quite a number of votes.
Oh, so you this wasn't just to like demonstrate what it would look like. You actually had a submission as part of the competition.
Yes, we participated, and that we were one of the joke tellers. All the team as a whole were one of the joke tellers, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's fantastic.
There were several very short, 2 to 3 second jokes that we all told, so they went fairly quickly. We did limit the joke tellers we tried to keep them under 30 seconds, somewhat a little longer, but not much, just because of people's not wanting to watch a really long video and to get to a punchline.
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. All right, I'm going to give folks maybe another minute or so. I've got one more question to ask, and then if we don't see any more questions, we'll kind of let folks go. But so you talked about kind of doing this again, and you talked about your in-person event. being different. Can you talk a little bit more, expand a little bit more on kind of how you see your plans for each of those moving forward?
Sure. For this year, we're planning to do both events, one leading up to the other to sort of bring them together. The Funnies in the Fort, like I said, will run roughly 2 weeks ahead of our live event. It'll be very much like last year. We'll reach out to our joke tellers here in a couple of months so we have a little more time to prepare, and try and get some jokes in and see if they want to participate or try and find others. And then at the actual event, which they will have tickets for because they're joke tellers and we love them. But we will bring all of them together and announce the winner and hand out the trophy before we get on with that event. So our event in previous years was very interactive, and this year it's going to be more of a show. Like I said, we're bringing in a nationally known comic team or a comic troupe that is going to perform in a theater that is already spread out and can help us make sure everybody is safe. So it should be a fun event. We're going to do a little hybrid of everything, I think, this year, and it should be a good time.
And I know when you and I were talking, one of the things you said that was a benefit of doing this online was actually being able to create a trophy. You had not had that before, correct?
Well, they had trophies, but they weren't personalized. So there would just be a last for literacy and the date, and then the trophy itself was always there. This last year, because we had a little bit of time, we could actually personalize it. And I'm told Gary really likes that trophy in his office.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, Matt, I don't see any more questions from folks. So I think we are going to say thank you for sharing your event with us. I think it's a fantastic event, and I mean, you can't beat spending $250 to put on a $30,000 fundraising event. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Everybody have a great rest of the day. Have a good weekend.